Good morning, staff and students. This year, our Remembrance Day service is going to look different than it has in years past. But we are going to do our best to provide everyone with a live Remembrance Day service to honor our veterans, both those who have fallen and those who still serve our country. Today, we will begin with the Treaty 4 acknowledgement. Then we ask all staff and students to please rise for O Canada and the honor song. We of the Swan Valley Regional Secondary School would like to gracefully acknowledge that the land on which we gather is Treaty 4 territory, signed on September 8, 1874 in Fort Capel, Saskatchewan. It is the traditional land of the Cree and Saulteaux people. Would you all please rise for O Canada and the honor song. You may be seated. The honor song serves as the national anthem in Indigenous ceremonies. The song acknowledges the role of veterans, past and present, in protecting our land and our country. The Cree translation of this song, sung by Crazy Horse Singers, is, "Our Majesty the Queen has given us a flag. We will let it blow in the wind forever to remember those who have given us freedom." Now, I would like to introduce Mrs. Meninsky-Arp to give some opening remarks on behalf of administration, which will be followed by a performance by the SVRSS Concert Band entitled Wings.
Good morning, students, staff, invited guests, and welcome to our service of remembrance. As we take time this morning to acknowledge, to remember, to reflect, and to honor those who have served and those who continue to serve our country, Canada. Honor, acknowledge, remember. And why on November 11th? The hostilities of the First World War ceased on November 11th, 1918 at 11 a.m., the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. The following year, 1919, marked the first day of observance, a national day to remember and honor those who died, as well as to give thanks for the sacrifices for those who came back home after serving their country. Every year in Canada and many other countries across the world, people gather in memorial parks, community halls, gymnasiums, workplaces to stand and to honor all who have fallen and to pledge never to forget. Today we will observe a moment of silence to acknowledge those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for their country, and we will honor those who continue to serve our country. Other ways to acknowledge those who have served Canada is to wear a poppy throughout the remembrance period. This period is from the last Friday in October until November 11th. Poppies may be worn on your left side, whether it's on your lapel, your collar, or your chest, so that it stays close to your heart as possible. What I just shared is what the Royal Canadian Legion's protocol is on appropriate and respectful ways of wearing the lapel poppy. However, wearing a poppy is a personal expression of remembrance, and how one chooses to wear a poppy is always an individual choice. Poppies have served as a symbol of sleep and death for a long time. According to Greek and Roman mythology, poppies have been placed in tombstones to represent eternal sleep. Some even thought that the vibrant color red guaranteed resurrection after death. Poppies were also discovered in King Tut's tomb when he was buried around 1324 BC. These flowers appeared on pieces of his jewelry, like his collar and his furniture. And in ancient Egypt, the poppy, the symbol of Horus, is the symbol of Horus, the god of the dead. The red poppy marks 100 years as a symbol of remembrance in Canada. Wearing a poppy was adopted on July 6, 1921, following the First World War. The poppy continues to be worn by millions of Canadians who have served and continue to serve Canada during times of war, conflict, and peace. Despite its long history, there are many fascinating facts about this flower that people may not be familiar with. And here's some points, as noted from the CTV website and the Canadian Legion's website. The poppy's use as a symbol of remembrance was inspired by a poem. You may be familiar with John Maclear's In Flanders Fields. It was this poem that inspired us to use the poppy as a symbol of remembrance in Canada and throughout the Commonwealth. Maclear was a lieutenant governor from Guelph, Ontario, and served as a medical officer during World War I, and he wrote that poem in May of 1915, following the death of one of his soldiers. Poppies grew in the battlefields because of the rubble. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow, and in this famous poem, it begins with that. But did you know that poppies actually grew on the battlefields because of the debris that remained? Bombardments of artillery during the World War I left fragments on the fields. The lime in the rubble acted as a fertilizer for the poppies, allowing them to grow. These flowers grew widely in Europe, particularly in countries of France and Belgium, which experienced lots of warfare during World War I and II. And not all poppies are red. In fact, they come in many colors, such as orange, yellow, pink, white, and even blue. Poppies may be worn at any time of the year. According to the Veterans Affairs of Canada, poppies could be worn at commemorative events throughout the year, and not just Remembrance. The Legion state that poppies can also be worn at a funeral of a veteran, at memorial services, and anniversaries of significant battles such as Vimy Rib. The poppy is a symbol of remembrance in Canada that started with a French woman. Inspired by Macrae's most famous poem, it was a woman who was named Madame Anna Guerin who persuaded, at that time, the Great Wars Veterans Society to adopt the poppy as a symbol of remembrance. This French poppy lady got to be known as she founded a charity to help rebuild parts of France destroyed by the First World War. She made poppies out of fabrics and sold them as a way of raising money for the veterans' needs and those also impacted by war. This idea of wearing a poppy came into effect on July 6, 1921, and the rest is history. While poppies are usually free, the Royal Canadian Legion gratefully appreciates any donations to the Poppies Funds, which is directly supporting their veterans and their families in needs. Staff and students, parents, and invited guests, the SVRSS service of Remembrance.
Next, we would like to ask Student Council member Arden Basker and French immersion student Jamie Parsons to read the poem In Flanders Fields.
In Flanders Field. In Flanders Field the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Field. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from falling hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Field.
Au champ d'honneur. Au champ d'honneur, les coquelicots sont parsemés de lot en lot. Après deux croix et dans l'espace, les alouettes devenues lasses, mêlant leur chant au affolement des ébussières. Nous sommes morts, nous qui sanguins la vie encore, nous, nos parents, à nos amis. C'est nous qui répondons ici. Au champ d'honneur. À vos jeunes descendus, à vous de porter l'oriflamme et de garder le fond de l'âme. Le goût de vivre en liberté, acceptez le défi. Sinon, les coquelicots se fermeront au champ d'honneur.
We will now lay the wreaths in memory of those whose lives were given for our freedom. We would now ask everyone to rise for the act of remembrance, which will be followed by the last post and then a minute of silence to remember those who gave their lives for us. Please remain standing until after the commitment to remember is read. They shall grow not old, as we that are left behind grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
They were young, as we are young. They served, giving freely of themselves. To them we pledge, amid the winds of time, to carry their torch and never forget. We will remember them. Please be seated. We will now watch a video provided to us by Canadian Armed Forces member Captain Pete Musters. This will be followed by the SVRSS concert band, who will be playing the hymn Sleepers Awake by J.S. Bach.
Good morning, Swan Valley Regional High School. My name is Captain Pete Musters, and I'm a proud serving member of the Canadian Armed Forces and the Royal Canadian Air Force. I'm an officer and pilot serving currently with 3 CFFTS in Portage la Prairie, Manitoba. My last posting was with 408 Tactical Helicopter Squadron in Edmonton, Alberta, doing mostly Army support work. I recently had a tour doing operations in Iraq, and Canada's military history makes me very proud to pay tribute to the men and women in uniform who served before me. When you hear stories of veterans, you realize how important it is to remember what they did and what they gave up for us so that we can enjoy our peace and freedoms today. Their sacrifices have been with their lives, their scarred bodies and minds, and the significant amount of time that they've spent away from home to protect us. Jennifer Barbrush asked me to explain what Remembrance Day means to me now. And I think about the stories of older veterans who are no longer around. I was lucky enough to grow up with a neighbor living next door who was a Second World War Navy officer. And he happened to be a surgeon during the D-Day landings at Normandy. And through him, I met a lot of other Second World War veterans. I remember hearing stories through my Dutch relatives who lived in Nazi-occupied Holland during the Second World War, who were starving because of the theft of food from the Germans as the war dragged on. And ironically, those relatives were bombed by the very RCAF squadron that I joined later. But they weren't bombed with bombs, they were bombed instead with food to help the civilians survive the war. Those memories are starting to fade for the next generation because they can't tell their stories any longer. So I ask you to take some time today to think about and learn their stories. They weren't simply a number, and a lot of them had just finished high school. Today's veterans are more those from the Cold War, peacekeeping, Afghanistan, and Iraq. And know too that this isn't all history, and that today there are many men and women who risk their lives every day for operations and training for operations. So this Remembrance Day, it's important for me to remember those names that I've spent getting to know. Some of those people are Captain Thomas McQueen, who died in a CF-18 training accident in 2016 in Cold Lake. My friend Kevin Hagan and his entire crew flying a Cyclone helicopter killed off the coast of Greece during Operation Reassurance. Now, the stories of young people traumatized by their experience and seeing the horrors of war again aren't just those who served in the trenches of the Great War or the grueling battles of the Second World War. Those awful moments have also been lived by people that I've served with working overseas. And they can't unsee or suppress moments that Canadians truly wouldn't comprehend. Those stories and textbooks are the same ones that are being written for you again today. Just as we've trained and fought for over a century, we continue to do so. Today, while enjoying a homemade meal at lunch, know that Canadians are out there eating hard rations. When you're at room temperature, know that someone is in plus 50 Celsius in the heat of the desert or minus 40 Celsius training with the Arctic Rangers. When you get home today, know that soldiers, sailors, and aircraftsmen have been away from their families for months on end, on guard for you. While you're carrying your book bag home, know that someone's carrying a rucksack that weighs as much as you do, and that military members have been doing that for over a century. Tonight, while you sleep, know that Canadians continue to stand on guard, as before and after the guns fell silent on the 11th of November 1918, marking the end of the First World War. So what has their sacrifice bought us? I think most of the things that we take for granted these days. While I was serving in Iraq, I was in a theater where people didn't get to sleep safely in their homes at night. The most terrible things that humans can do to each other were everyday occurrences. Here in Canada, we can speak our minds, join political movements, vote for those who we choose, and laws are upheld. Corruption's not rampant. Girls are allowed to go to school, and your religion is yours to choose if you want one. My tour was a short one, compared to most veterans, and millions of those tours have been done by Canadians on behalf of their neighbors for the last century. And they've done that to ensure that the freedoms and responsibilities we have today remain. These tours have been in the mud of Vimy Ridge and Passchendaele, the beaches of Dieppe and Normandy, over the dark skies of Europe and the cold Atlantic, and countless places of chaos for peacekeepers, to discuss just a few. My squadron mates recently just returned from supporting UN peacekeeping operations, flying helicopters for medical evacuation, moving troops and supplies in Mali, one of the world's poorest and unstable countries. At home, Canadian Armed Forces stands on guard in different ways. We conduct search and rescue operations from the air and sea, and we respond to the needs of communities struck by floods and fires. So please think of the men and women who have served Canada in some of the most difficult situations anyone could ask. And think of what they've done for over a century in places like Amiens, or half a world away in places like Afghanistan just recently. Please give a special thought to those who've never come home and those who gave up the years of their youth. Please give your gratitude to the veterans and the families who are still with us. We must never forget what they've given us.
Mrs. Medinsky will now say a few closing remarks.
I want to thank everyone for being part of today's service. I would like to thank Student Council and your teacher advisor, Ms. Berbash, for your organization of the program. And thank you, Mrs. Turton and the SVRSS Concert Band for your part of today's service. Mr. Penner, we appreciate all your contributions this morning. Just a reminder that tomorrow morning tomorrow is our day of remembrance, and if you would like to watch any of the services, it will be on either one of the local stations. CBC or CTV will be carrying live broadcast, probably around 10:30 in the morning. I talked a lot about the poppy, and I want to close with how to remove your poppy. Some choose to remove their poppy at the end of the day on November 11th. Some choose to remove their poppy at the conclusion of the ceremony and place this poppy on a cenotaph or on a wreath as a sign of respect. This has become a poignant tradition each year at the National Day of Remembrance, which I talked about earlier, in Ottawa, where thousands of poppies will be placed on the tomb of the unknown soldier. When a poppy is removed, it should be stored appropriately. It may be disposed of respectfully. I encourage anyone who finds a poppy that has fallen on the ground to pick it up, brush it off, and so that it can be kept or disposed of in a very respectful way. Wearing a poppy. By you wearing this poppy, you are honoring a veteran. You are honoring the Canadian Armed Forces. You are also, this becomes a sign of your visual pledge that you never forget. We are here today in this beautiful school, and we live in this wonderful country, Canada, because Canadians have made sacrifices in the past and will continue to sacrifice and serve our country today. Do your part for this very short time by wearing a poppy in their honor. As Canada is one of the most admired countries in the world to live, do not ever take that for granted.
We thank everybody for taking part in our virtual Remembrance Day service. Have a good day, and you may now move to Block 2 class.